Well, many voters are expecting to watch this debate very closely tonight as Vance and Walz take the national stage.
The Northern News Now's Isabella Zadra is live at Zeitgeist in downtown Duluth before a debate watch party there.
Isabella, you spoke with some people already earlier today about what they're hoping to hear from both of these VP candidates.
Yeah, Dan and Laura, Zeitgeist is set to fill up soon, with folks attending a watch party here tonight for the one and only vice presidential debate. Before the event, I spent the day talking to people in downtown Duluth about what they're hoping to hear from both parties during tonight's debate.
When I hear that, see, I'm a different...
Last month, Trump and Harris had their first and possibly only presidential debate. Tuesday, their vice presidential candidates are set to have a debate of their own, and many Twin Port voters are looking forward to tuning in.
And we're just looking forward to watching the debate and then having a real good conversation after.
Carol Daigle and Darius Ferris will be listening closely for more policy standpoints from both parties.
I'm pretty familiar with the Democratic side, but I'd like to hear some policies from the Republican.
Meanwhile, Abigail Manilin is looking for a conversation about current worldwide issues.
I'm hoping to hear more about the situation in Gaza and Palestine in general, and other genocides happening in the world.
Josh Posiak is more interested on how the nominees carry themselves during the debate.
Just respect and honesty. I think there's a lot of dishonesty out there on both sides.
But no matter political views, many Minnesotans express it has been interesting watching their own governor appear on a presidential ballot and the nationwide stage.
I enjoy all the Minnesota dad jokes.
Proud of Minnesota, and I think it really represents the best of our nation.
Although we heard from many people who are excited about tonight's debate, I also heard from many who have no interest in watching it, showing no interest in either Vance or Walz.
All right, that's very interesting to hear as well. Isabella Zadra live for us tonight in Duluth. Thank you, Isabella.